Okay, am I set up? I am. Okay. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. I know it was a very kind of timely notice, very short notice, so I promise I'm going to try to keep this as brief and quickly as possible because I know I don't want to keep you guys here too late. But I basically had to do some research for my graduate class, and I'm studying to be what they call a reading master's student or a reading education master's student, which just basically means I could get my reading specialist degree. So I would be able to accurately diagnose students who might have a potential reading disability and then even potentially give other teachers for different grade levels different strategies that they could use within their classroom and different tidbits that they could take within their lessons or even some suggestions to tell to specific parents about specific children. So what I chose to focus on is what I am working on in my classroom, which is the importance of teaching early literacy skills, that's a big word, literacy skills, to preschool programs, in my preschool program in particular, which what I focus on right now is letter names and the letter sound recognition, which is very hard for a lot of my children, especially since I have about 2 to 3 language issues in my classroom. I have an expressive language delay in my classroom, and I have another child who sees a speech therapist for just his regular speech alone, and I have another little girl who sees a speech therapist for her speech alone. So it is very hard for them to understand how to learn it, and there are very different characteristics of the specific letters that I want to kind of tie into to see how can I make somebody understand that a lowercase b does look like a lowercase d, but how can you tell them apart, and how you can tell the specific sounds apart, and what makes it meaningful for my students. Because of course, I want them to get as much as they can from my classroom and not just be told, this is a B, this is a D, learn it, live it, love it, great. So, to start off with our presentation, I know my board isn't the best, but of course we have tried to get tech down here. We know the stories. Tech has not been giving me a new message about a board yet, so I did provide you with the slides there in front of you for you to look at for reference. Everything is there that is just up on my board. You can follow along with it. I'll keep it very nice and brief, like I said. So the very first slide that I have here is the importance of early literacy. So people might say, well, they're only preschool. Why is it so important for them to know everything right away? And in my opinion, it's basically like building a house, the foundation, or even building a cake. You need to have that basis in order to build up. You need to have the foundation before you start building a kitchen, a living room, the bedrooms, and the ceiling, and everything. You need that strong, sturdy foundation for them to learn further on. And for every child to have that strength with their alphabet knowledge, with phonemic awareness, and everything understanding print concepts, it leads to them having a stronger sense of their knowledge and of their learning. And further down the road, it gets rid, well, I shouldn't say gets rid of, but it shows a lesser need to be diagnosed with a reading disability. And also, they kind of tend to have a behavioral or motivation or self-esteem issue later on if they don't know everything right away. They don't have that strong foundation. And I'm sure you have seen that with some of your students in your classrooms. I know within the kindergarten classroom, they're still trying to get their footing on how they learn and who they are. But then once they get up to the 3rd grade classrooms, they're really nervous. They don't want to raise their hand. They don't want to volunteer because maybe they forget the sound that SH makes for that digraph that they learned in 1st grade. Or they don't remember what sound X makes from back in preschool and kindergarten. They don't want to volunteer because they don't want to be embarrassed by their peers, and we need to avoid that. So letting them know everything very strong and very meaningfully early on can definitely take rid of all those other things there. And also, the dropout rate. I went to a public high school. We did have a very high dropout rate, but we also had a very different demographic than we have here. We have a very good demographic. Go LaSalle Academy. We have a very good demographic here. I don't sense any dropout rate being an issue, but that doesn't mean that it's not in the world around us today. There was a very high dropout rate in my high school, in my school district back home, immensely. It was a very sensitive subject for all the teachers in my school, but they were very aware of that. But of course, when you have such diverse cultures, diverse students, diverse language disabilities, and everything else that was going on in my district, it's very hard to kind of tiptoe around. But it's good to be aware and made aware of what the strong reading disability and reading knowledge can help for those students and for their parents and for their teachers. All right. Am I going quick enough? All right, let's go to our very next slide. Our very next slide is how should we teach these young learners early on? So, for me, I think that you should provide them with a very rich curriculum and, let them be aware of the print in their environment. I label everything, as you can see in my room. I label my pencil sharpener, my garbage can, the window, the basket. I label everything. That way they know where everything goes. Helps my organization, go me. But it also helps them to understand, okay, our pencil sharpener, pencil sharpener, what letter does that start with? They go over and they read it and they tell me, Miss Devereaux, pencil sharpener starts with P. And I go, oh my goodness, you are absolutely correct. But they are aware of what letter that is and what sound it makes and what object it is. Also, I'm in preschool. These kids are young. They want to play. They don't want to sit within a workbook and they don't want to do anything else. They want to just play and have fun. So give them activities that they can play with. I am a very firm believer in game-based knowledge and game-based learning. Also with tactile stuff like Play-Doh. They love Play-Doh. Play-Doh, markers, paint. They love even Legos. I like to use Unifix cubes. It works with math also, so you're tying in another academic subject right there. Forming the shape of the letters with the Unifix cubes. Forming the shapes of the letter with the Play-Doh. Maybe you have little game cards. They play like Go Fish. I have B. Who has S? And they say, oh, I have B, and who has S? Just playing simple games like that. They really love it, and you can see it in my classroom if you ever tiptoe your way in. They're always playing games, and they always love it. Another thing I very firmly believe in is storybooks. I always keep my storybooks up in the front of my room so my children see them every single day. But I also have a big library in the back of my corner, if you can see it right there. It looks a mess now, but it is a mess because my kids love going into that corner, and they love looking through the books that I have, all the new books I switch out. Sometimes I just take books that I put out in September, I put them away for a month, and I put them back in November, and they think they're brand new. But they already saw it before. But do they realize that? No, it's brand new to them. So just keeping it ever-changing, ever-flowing, put some new stuff in, they think it's great. They love my library corner back there. And of course my little benches, that's their little sitting nook, and they like to read to each other. It's so cute. They love it. But another thing I also learned back in my undergraduate degree at Marywood was about a guy named Howard Gardner. Howard Gardner is, well, we also have the school Howard Gardner in case you haven't heard of it. I'm not sure where it's located, but it's located very close to here. Howard Gardner developed the multiple theories of multiple intelligences. So what that basically means is that we as teachers need to understand that children are all very unique. They don't all learn the same way. As standardized tests might want us to believe, they don't. So, us as teachers, we need to understand the different intelligences that we need to teach to. And right there on your slide, it's just a quick little picture of what the intelligences are and what they basically mean. Like, for example, we have the visual spatial. That means that child who learns as a visual spatial learner does very well when you give them a diagram, a picture. But then we have a child who might be bodily kinesthetically smart. That means they need to be moving when they're learning. They can't sit still. They need to stand up. They need to form the letters with their bodies. They need to make some motions when they're saying the sounds. They need to be doing something in order for that learning to become meaningful to them. But that's just a quick little synopsis. I could go on for days about Howard Gardner because I fully believe in his theory, and I try to pull in as much as I can that of course, I have within this classroom for my little learners. But reading his stuff is just very powerful, and it's very good to have under your belt. Also, expose the students to letters, their sounds, and everything throughout their environment. Environmental print is a big thing. I like to tell them, for, like, let's say, letter M. Every kid loves McDonald's. We always talk about What starts with Oh, there's a good place that has French fries that has an on their side. But what letter says And they go McDonald's. You're right. But just getting them to understand all that stuff that's around them that they probably see every other day gets them so excited, because then they could go and tell their mom and dad, oh my goodness, Miss Devereaux said that there's an M on McDonald's, and she's right, there is an M, blah, blah, blah. And then I had parents telling me, okay, my kid had a heart attack because they told me that there was an M in McDonald's. But you know what? They were right, so I let it happen. And they should let it happen. These kids are excited, they're learning, they're little. Let them have fun right now. Because when they get older, they might not want to be in school for that long. And yeah, we know that that's true. All right, let's go to the next slide. Let's keep it moving. Okay. My next slide is just preschoolers reading readiness development. So, of course, back when I was in my undergrad, I had to take child development classes. I had to take a bunch of reading language classes. And basically, for these little learners at this such young age, they first learn their language orally, through speaking, through talking to one another. So talk to them as much as you can. Even if it's just listening to what they have to say, sometimes it comes out as gibberish to you, and it does to me sometimes too, but I just listen to them. And if I could pick out 2 or 3 things that kind of click in my mind, I could put them together like a little puzzle, and then I get what they have to say. But most of the time, they are very aware of what they are saying. They're aware of what they need and how to get it, so they go to you and they confront you about it. Another thing is that they associate everything with the concept of reading. So, when I'm reading a storybook up front for them, if I have a spare hand, because sometimes I'm trying to control them on the floor, if I have a spare hand, I take my pointer finger, and I just point to the words as I'm reading it. And just that simple little task of you pointing to the words and having them understand that, oh my goodness, like she's saying that word, that's a word, that's not just like a picture or a drawing. Sometimes it clicks for students and sometimes it doesn't right away. I actually had a little boy last week who came up to me with a book in his hand, and he started saying, what is this word? And he pointed to a word, it wasn't just a picture. But he knew it was a word because it was the letters printed on the page. So that's where you can see that little step in his learning clicked. Also, they have to learn the technical aspects of reading. So first, they need to know what sounds those letters make. They need to know what the letters look like, first of all, too. If they don't know what a B looks like, they're not going to make the sound of B. If they don't know what a Z looks like, they're not going to know what sound Z makes. So they have to know everything in the specific order for them to be successful for learning, too. And of course, they have to understand the sounds of all the different words and how to blend them together. I know for first grade, they have Wilson's Foundations, where they have the tapping of the letters for the specific words. There are other curriculums that don't do that, but that is a great thing for them to start to blend the words, in my opinion, and it's also a tactile strategy for them to also touch each sound for each letter on their fingers. And if there's a digraph, there's 2. I know. Are you trained? No, I've just seen it so many times that I should just diagnose myself as trained. But let's say there's a digraph. So let's say SH for the sound sh. They take S and H, 2 letters, put them together, and they make one sound. So that's a great strategy for them to understand, because other else they're gonna go like this. Sh. That's hard. Like, yes, you get each sound, but those 2 together just make one sound. Make it easy. Shh. That's it. But I love that strategy for those kids too. And also, you have to remember, these kids are also unique. They learn on their own time. I had a little boy, still have him now, who, for the life of him, could not write his name, did not know his colors, did not know the first letters we started learning about. And then, just last week, he comes up to me, he wrote his name. Don't know where it came from, he wrote his name. Then, we were reading a story, and he noticed that there was a letter A. And there was also a letter B. And he kept going on and on until we got to about the letter F. He didn't know a single letter when I was teaching them. But all of a sudden, it clicked and now he knows. Isn't that amazing? I could have cried that day. That was amazing for me. All right. Keep it going. Next, we have just going into depth about all the different things that we should be knowing as teachers, and especially for a reading specialist. There's the very definition of everything.